Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another AFL Fantasy Fanatics Tuesday night Q&A. We are live on Tuesday, the 1st of April, and there is no April Fool's jokes here. We are here and ready to talk some fantasy because anytime the 1st of April comes around, you sort of almost have to discount most things that happen on the socials because who knows what's real and what's not. Because I woke up thinking Vrat Coley was going to Sydney Sixers, but then I realised, hang on, it's the 1st of April. That's actually not happening. So I'm your host, Bales, and you can find me at BAILSDT across the socials. And joining me, as always, is my co-host and fellow AFL Fantasy Fanatic, Tim Guest. Guesty, mate, how are you? A couple of days removed from round 3.
Yeah, had a chance to. Yeah. Look, it's been a busy week. I told my staff that I was selling, my managers that I was selling the business first thing this morning. They all they were shocked until they realised what was going on. But yeah, no, look, keen to have some chats about some AFL fantasy players, and yeah, let's get into a bunch of questions, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And we've got two very special guests that have been regulars on here and ranked very highly so they can give tonight's episode a bit of credibility because unfortunately myself and Guesty are not ranked where we want to be. But first up, he was on double duty last week and he's back again. It is Joy Decino. Joddy, mate, how are you? You're flying, mate. How was your weekend and what did you end up scoring and where are you currently ranked at the moment?
How are you, Bales and Guesty and Liam? Thanks for having me on again. Loving it. Had a pretty good weekend. Ended up scoring 1998, and I'm up to rank 547. So Monday morning was quite nice going to work, and going pretty well. And the team value's looking pretty solid as well. So keen to get stuck in with the trades this week and sort of set myself up next week for gather round. So keen to get stuck in with some strategy and questions.
Yeah, exactly, mate. Cracking start and going along very nicely. As is this man, another one of the regulars that we get on, especially Tuesday nights. It is Liam from Free Kick. Liam, mate, how are you? Obviously just back from footy training, mate. How was the weekend and how's your ranking looking, mate?
Yeah, look, not too bad. Weekend passed by almost uneventfully. Rankings looking not too bad. I scored a 1912. So that kind of puts me, I think my round rank was about 4K. So it was a solid score. It took a bit of shenanigans with Nevitt being a laid out. I've been planning to trade him in. So score was definitely boosted as a result of then pivoting to Corey Warner and getting the Sam Davidson emergency. But overall rank is 860, which I'm absolutely chuffed about at the moment. But I'm also not unaware of how early it is in the season. So I'm not counting any chickens, no ducks are in a row. This is all just about continuing to try and keep the train moving and see if I can hold a decent rank for the next kind of 5 to 6 weeks when often you see the biggest moves up into the kind of top 100 ranks.
Yeah, exactly. No, you and Geordie have laid the foundations for hopefully a push on from here, and me and Guesty are still trying to build those foundations. So hopefully we can rise up the ranks quickly and start enjoying fantasy because it's been a struggle to start the season. But so another round, another 2 trades up the sleeve, best 18, final week of that before we get into best 22. But Geordie, I thought I'd throw to you first, mate. You sent through to us a couple of the players' prices and what some of the popular ins this week, what they could potentially make. So far away at some of these popular players and what they potentially could be priced at if they go at a certain average.
Yeah, no worries. So, we've got a lot of players this week that we could trade in that are going to make cash, and it's quite hard. I'm finding it quite difficult to figure out who to bring in. Obviously, the main ones are Moraes and Bias, and we can probably talk about maybe how we think about the job security and the sub, and obviously with these rookies, the sub rule over the last couple of weeks, like we saw Nevitt on the weekend getting subbed. We pretty much I didn't see that coming personally. So that's going through our minds a little bit, but then you've got some other guys like Marich and Humphrey who I think are going to avoid the sub vest. So just doing some numbers because my trades this week, I'm sort of looking at doing a double down or maybe getting a Marich and then looking to have a bit of cash spare to go next week into gather round when it's best 22. So Marich obviously on the weekend had a pretty good role. I just put in there going at 78 for the next 3 weeks. If we can see him doing that, which we can chat about. But that nets him about 185K. which is pretty good. Humphrey going at 80. That's potentially a little bit high, but that would, this is for the next 3 weeks, by the way, that would get him at 161K. This is in the price rising. Christian Moraes going at 50 for the next 3 weeks, 152K. Max Hall, who is already about 410, I think, but him going at 60 would still make 147K. Riley Bias going at 50, 130K. And Langford at 50, 100K. There's probably also Corey Warner in there we might need to talk about as well. I didn't do him, but I would say he would be pretty similar if he can go at about 50.
Yeah, exactly. There's some big price movers there. Even
Just go through it quickly one more time, Geordie.
So Marich going at 78 average, 185K. Humphrey at 80, 161K. Moraes at 50, 152K. Hall at 60, 147K. Bice at 50, 130K. Langford at 50, 100K.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so some good money makers there. Liam, I'm assuming a few of those guys are on your shopping list this week. Is there a couple of names out of that list that sort of stick out to you that either yourself or coaches should be either bumping up their list, or if they are up the top, making sure they're probably looking at bringing them in this week?
Yeah, I definitely think that Bice and Moraes present the most kind of tantalising option. And unsurprisingly, like I haven't checked today, but they were the most traded in players when I checked yesterday. I'd be shocked if they weren't still now. But both of, and I think that there are questions to be asked about all of those trade-in options. I definitely think that, funnily enough, I think that the problem with Langford is I really am worried that he's a bit like Bailey Humphrey from a couple of years ago, which is he can score really, really well when he has that CBA role. I just don't know if it's going to stick, and without it, he may struggle in a team that has possibly the most ineffective forward 50 entry kind of game plan in the AFL outside of the truly stinky teams. Whereas Moraes has a whole bunch of players coming back, potential that he may see some more time in the sub-vest. Bice has already seen the sub-vest, but probably has a little bit of better run with injuries outside of himself. He's got Cunningham that's still a couple of weeks away. We've seen that Taylor Adams isn't going to be coming into that side anytime soon. I feel like there was a whole bunch of players that got pushed out on the injury timelines at Sydney. So I would be.
Did you say Mills? I don't know if you said Mills or not.
Mills as well.
Yeah.
There's just a whole bunch of options that I think mean that he just hangs around in the side for a little bit longer, or I'm not, kept awake at night with cold sweats thinking that he might get put in the sub-vest or dropped. Yeah,
exactly. I've just got up here the most traded in out of the week, and obviously I'll go through this more in depth tomorrow in the trade talk if any of you guys are keen for that. So, yeah, Christian Rice is by far the most traded in at nearly 18K, and then Bice is next at 4.8. So there's a big difference between first and second. Then you got a few others like Rankin, Marek, Libba, Sinclair, Simpkin, like Dacos, few people upgrading there, and then like out. It's a few of the guys like a Will Day, obviously he's on bye, Lindsay who's injured, which I don't know what you guys think, but 1 to 2 weeks Melbourne listed him as. I'm probably in the camp of holding unless you need the cash. Then you got like Horn Francis, Camporelli, Sanders, DeConing, Kako, a few of those guys there. I think Campo might even slot back into Carlton's team this week with how poor they've been. Tim, knowing that Lindsay's been listed as 1 to 2 weeks, are you looking at holding him through that and hoping that he comes back next week, or at worst case the week after?
Look, I think the safe move is holding. But I think I think there is also a play where you could trade him out, right? Like I think I would not be surprised at all if Melbourne ease him back in. Like there's no rush. He could be a sub first game back in. So there is potential that he, you could jump back on him, or that his performance is not that great when he comes back into the side. So I think the safe play is you hang on to him just because it is only for a short period of time. He looks like he's got a great role and could be a good scorer, but I think there's also a play for people to get off him.
Yeah,
on the chance
just to add to that, in the Melbourne injury report, they did talk about the fact that he was still a bit stiff and sore. So I would not be completely shocked if it's a 2-week timeline. And then you raise the point of him being sub. If you had a look, I think Melbourne has been the team that has just churned that bottom 7 to 10 players I feel like on their best 18 or best 22 in each week. I really don't have a solid understanding of who's going to be playing and when. I wouldn't be shocked if they say either, possibly not the green vest, but a red vest. Say, we definitely want you playing, but if this game is out of hand and you've got any like underlying soreness still, he'd be a prime candidate to go, you're not worth risking, off you come. So I'm fully on board with it not being like a must trade, not like his break even is disgustingly high, but it's still uncomfortably high if he is green vest, or you might be only getting 1 week's worth of cash gen if he's a red vest when he returns.
I think it depends a lot on what you can do this week, right? If you need that extra cash to get to, we should be starting to get into that upgrade season. It's kind of, we're on that week where it's, maybe a little bit early, but also, many of those top teams are getting into upgrades. So, if you can get to where you need to go without the cash, then hold on to him. But if you need that cash, then I've got no dramas with people taking it.
Yeah. We've got a few super chats here, which we'll get to in just a second. I just want to touch on one more quick point before we do. But if you guys do have questions, keep flying them through because we'll be answering a heap of them very, very shortly. But, Joy, I want to get your thoughts on, so a lot of people are looking at fixing up your Camporellis, your Hasties, guys like that are either sort of haven't been playing or have been playing maybe sub or whatever. But then you've got guys like a Sam Lawler, Finn O'Sullivan, some guys on the bench that their cash gen is slowing and they haven't really put up that 70, 80 score yet to really get going. And next week, I think, is probably where a lot of us are looking at upgrade season starting. And I know you had a good pod with DT Lemon in the week talking about upgrade season. So if anyone hasn't checked that out, make sure you do, because it's a very, very good chat. Where would you be looking? Do you think it's more important to get rid of the Camporellis and the Hasties? Or if they're playing, is it maybe better to go a Lawler or a Finn O'Sullivan to have more cash to upgrade next week?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the red dot rookie is a big one to try and get out. I think Campo in this example might be one. We sort of talked about this on the pod with Lemon, is if we can see a rookie coming back in a couple of weeks, you could potentially hold him. And I think the good thing with this week with Campo is that they'll get the team sheet Wednesday night. So we will know early, which is a great call. I think if he's a red dot, I think with the rookies, you could probably trade him. The other thing is he probably might come back. Like Carlton aren't going the best at the moment. So, and I think is Zach Williams maybe got Achilles or something. They might have to shift something around. But yeah, if you had like a Hasty or something, I think I'd probably prioritize getting him out for like a Moraes or Bias, because you want it. The number one thing is to get your team value going. And I think you can, well, personally, I'm looking at holding a little bit of cash this week for next week for Gather Round, because that's when our full team is going to be on show. And, there's teams out there that have a rookie D5, D6. They might have, some of these forwards actually put up some good ones on the weekend. But we thought, I know we talked about this last week, Bales, but we thought those 4 rookies, Nevitt, Lindsay, Nod, and Ashcroft, were going to ride us to the buys, and not to the buys, to Gather Round. And now Lindsay's injured and Nevitt was sub. And so there's little things that are changing per week. So I definitely will have the red dot out first, because you want to keep your cash gen going. In terms of O'Sullivan and Layla, it's probably lower on my list. Like, I have looked at trading O'Sullivan. He's probably one with Nevitt for me. So like, if Nevitt, the great thing about Geelong is their Friday night. If Nevitt is the sub, I'm going to trade Nevitt. But if he's not the sub, they're playing Melbourne. I think he could put up a decent score. So I'd probably lean towards Foss there or a Layla. And that's if you've got no red dots. So I think we need to look at team sheets. And the good thing about some of these teams is they do play early this week.
Yeah, exactly. Liam, where do you sit with it? Are you agreeing with Geordie there and get rid of the Hasties and the Campos, or do you think there's a case to be made that Lawler and O'Sullivan could go early because their ceiling just doesn't quite look like it might be there?
I don't think that it's a neat split between the different types of characters. I think Hasty and Camporelli are different prospects. I think Hasty has already shown himself to be subbed out and the sub in, and he was a very late sub in. You also got to know that St Kilda will see Alex Taru, who was one of their first-round draft picks this year, who's a swingman, potentially come in the next few weeks. He's going to be debuting in the VFL. I think the writing's on the wall of his position inside, and if he is coming in, I would be surprised if it wasn't as the sub. And his break-even is 17. Camporelli has if he comes back into the side, his break-even is 7. So the risk that even if he does come back in and he is subbed in or subbed out, he's still going to make you cash. And I also think that he looked relatively solid for Carlton, particularly in round 1. So I would be saying that Hasty sits at a far different priority position for me than Camporelli. As for Lawler and Foss, I think that Lawler, presents a far better ownership prospect, even if he hasn't scored spectacularly last week. He managed to get to a 60 in the game against Port Adelaide in a pretty competitive kind of final quarter and a half, and he looks excellent in round 1, albeit with some lower scoring. Some inconsistency from him is not a shock, but I don't see him being in the same position as Finn O'Sullivan, where I actually think that his position in defence, because he's not playing the same type of Sheasel McKercher role, that's all Caleb Daniel, he's playing as a lockdown small, which is making scoring more difficult for him. And I also don't think that he's as comfortable playing in that position as the times when he looks best and he scores best is when he's moved onto the wing into more space, where I actually think he's a more natural scorer. So whilst he is playing in defence, I think that he's a bigger priority trade out than someone, if you own Lawler and Foss, I'd be trading Foss beforehand.
Yep. Like it. Like the thoughts there. Tim, any sort of closing thoughts with that before we move on to the questions?
No, actually, I've got a question. I'm going to throw it back to Liam. So let's say Campo comes back in, right? And leaving you with like a Lindsay as your only red dot. Who do you trade? Do you trade a Foss or do you trade a Lindsay?
Yeah, that is a difficult question. I have personally entertained trading Foss more times than I've entertained trading Lindsay, but I must say I'm not definitive in one direction. It may ultimately be what kind of trade I can use on the other side, because I think that there are some core players that I'm looking to target who I think are slightly underpriced in the midfield. And other than that, maybe I'm trying to look to put a lot of cash on someone's head, maybe take a Fraser up to a premium defender or a premium midfielder and have a bit of a restructure. That's where I'm more likely to use Lindsay. But if I'm just talking about, cash generation prospects over the next 5 weeks, I probably would have Lindsay in a better position than I would Foss, but it's not a definitive, absolutely, this is going to happen every day of the week.
Oh, yeah, it's a 50-50 call.
Yeah. I'd probably trade Foss as well. I think, as you say, Liam, Lindsay's cash gen, he's still break evens like in the 30s. So if that first couple of minutes on the weekend's anything to go by, that could have been a big score, and he could have some good ones when he comes back. And if he comes back in a week or two, Melbourne have got a decent run, I think, up until about round 8, round 9. I think they got Richmond in like round 7 or something like that, maybe a bit earlier. Might be round 6. Oh no, it is round 7 because it's the Anzac round. So that could be a pretty good score for him. Let's move into some of these questions. So we've got a couple of super chats here, so thanks for the people that sent them through. So Stephen Papali's got the first one. Thanks, mate. He says, Geordie, I'll go to you for this one. Never or Sanders down to Ryan Marrick holding Lindsay. So first of all, I want to get your thoughts on Ryan Marrick, who obviously got the price before. Obviously, McGovern is injured, and it sounds like multiple weeks. So that's obviously stocks up for a guy like Marrick. So thoughts on Marrick, and then if you trade Never or Sanders to him.
Yeah, I've looked at Marrick a lot today. At the start of the week, I was like, I'm just going Moraes and bias, but I've looked at some of the numbers, and he had like 9 kickouts. And talking to Liam as well today a bit, and there's a bit of Marrick's just getting a bit more hype, and I'm probably going to go back and watch the game actually, because maybe Guesty, you were at the game, weren't you? The West Coast game.
I wasn't watching very much of it though. Go on.
Yeah. I think I'm going to watch it back just to be sure on that role. I think is McGovern out now for a couple of weeks, so
multiple weeks. I think it's 3 to 4 weeks for the groin. Look, I didn't really watch the game that much. I mean, during these games over in WA where it's still daylight saving, like just where I sit on Premiership Terrace, man, it's just sun straight in your eyes. Like you just would have cooked out there. But look, I did see him have a number of possessions down back. And the thing that I really liked about him was that kick, mate, that boot that he's got on him. And he was using that kick. I've heard some of the content creators talk about, he started being used as that distributor, which makes a lot of sense with Gov out. I mean, I don't know how he's going to score. Maybe he's around about that, 70 kind of player with Gov in. But I've been looking at this a little bit too. And I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too optimistic, but I see some high numbers there from him, hey? So I see it as a definite player, a definite option compared to Race.
Here's a question for everyone, and this was something that I posed in a group chat today. Where does he sit on the Charlie Comben to Harry Himmelberg spectrum? That's the type of player we're talking about here. And important to note that in the last quarter, Ryan Marrick, when Jeremy McGovern had done his groin with, a minute or so to go in the third, scored 12 points. So didn't exactly rack up with Jeremy McGovern off the ground. And there are people who are far more invested in West Coast than I am that are talking about potential reshuffles, Oscar Allen playing in defence to cover for the no McGovern. There's a bit of uncertainty, and I don't think that they trust Marrick to play as a lockdown or to be able to play that same interceptor role that McGovern has, filled now for 3 years and has easily been the most important player at West Coast and possibly the most important player for their team in the AFL, given the depth that exists behind him and his overall quality. I think that there are some reasonable red flags because, he's not exactly a spectacular footballer just yet. He's got a great kick, but I don't know if he's a spectacular user yet. He had a player rating of 10, which suggests that he was all right on the weekend, but nothing incredible. I'm not expecting hundreds. It's just, do I think he's a potential player who's going to average 62, 63, at which point he's a categorical fail and a waste of a trade. If he's pushing mid to high 70s, that puts him 20 points below, the top 6 blanket in his line. That's okay. I just don't know if I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I think he's probably, from the question you said, I think probably closer to the Harry Himmelberg than the Charlie Comben. I think that they'll look to use him with that kick and sort of develop him in this role. And I think he can go mid-70s, and I think there's a world where he could even go around that 80 mark because we were looking at, I was pretty keen on like a Liam Baker. I thought he'd get some kick-ins, but obviously his role has shifted a bit to West Coast, playing a little bit of midfield as well. So not expecting, as you say, hundreds every week. But the fact that he scored a 74, I think, was against Brisbane at the Gabba, that was impressive there. And to back it up with a ton, I think that his sub in round one is almost a blessing for people looking at him because his price would be very, very different if it wasn't for that. So, Geordie, who would you trade, though, down to a Marrick if you're looking at him? Is it a Nevitt or a Sanders, or do you think it's obviously Friday night? You see what Nevitt is. If Nevitt's in the team and playing, you probably keep him, or if he's sub, you trade him. Is that probably how you're looking at it?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think if Nev is the sub, you have to get rid of him, I think, because his break-even is 56. But, they're coming up against Melbourne, who give up points. If he's in there, he should go an 80 this week, I think. And then that gets his cash gen going. I probably should have done Never, actually. And if he went 80 from now for the next 3, what he actually makes, whether it's 100K or so. And that's probably enough to hold him, I think, over Sanders, because Sanders is probably not going to make 100K over the next 3 weeks if Never isn't sub, but that is the risk. So I'd probably, but then again, Sanders did actually look a lot better on the weekend. I know we didn't have much higher CBAs compared to the last couple of weeks, but he actually looked a lot better. So I think I'm going to go with the team sheets and just looking if he's a sub. But that is it's a pretty tough one because I think Nev could still potentially make 100K. And I don't know if Sanders is going to do that.
Yeah, I think DC made a good point with us on Sunday, and he also mentioned again in the Hat Chat pod that Sanders has almost got that feel of like the Tom Phillips, like the guy's just going to keep doing enough to stay around, and we're not going to jump off him. And the thing that's worrying is you could look at that second quarter from Sanders 2 ways. One, he scored 41 points. That was fantastic when he got some more CBAs, but you could also look at the other way and go, he scored 32 points in the remaining 3 quarters And when the game was sort of on the line late with about 5 minutes to go, he went off and he stayed off and didn't come back on. So clearly not, Bevo doesn't still trust him as much as some of those other guys. That worries me a bit. So, and I wouldn't be shocked if there's a game coming up where he's the guy that subbed out. I've been worried about that watching on the watch-alongs because I feel like every week I do a Bulldogs watch-along. I've had that worry that he's going to be subbed out. So, if Nevitt's not playing, I think for sure. If Nevitt isn't the sub, for sure I'd be going Sanders out. But thank you, Stefan. That was a very long discussion about the one question, but thanks, mate. Appreciate you sending through the super chat. So Andrew Griffiths has got the next question, Liam. Looking to trade Horne-Francis out to Marias and then going SDK up to Whitfield, Zorko, or Sinclair. So doing a bit of a restructure. What are your thoughts and who would you pick of those defenders?
I would be going for Zorko just for that run. There is no positional run I think that's any better than Brisbane designated kickers over the next 6 weeks. I think it's like players average 6 points above against their matchups based on DFS Australia's DVP situation. So that's where I'll be going. But ultimately, I'm not looking to go up that high. I don't see the value in Zorko, and I don't love doing a restructure again this late. I still think where you can, you're still trying to find some value. I traded in to Rankin last week, Desire the week before, because as much as they are players that are priced in the top percentile in their line, I still saw value in them. And I don't see that with Zorko. And I don't see that with Whitfield, and I can't remember who the other one was.
Sinclair. You missed that pop score, though. That's the thing.
The only thing with Sinclair is that he has something that almost apparently no one in my team does, which is DPP, which is the thing that might push you going over to that. And I think of that group, he's the cheapest. So I think that's, if you're looking to go from that group, like as much as I think if you want the best score, like Zorko is going to probably blitz it for 6 weeks. I actually think that for your team structure, and potentially you could make the case on value, that Sinclair is the better option to trade in this week.
Yeah. Well, what are your thoughts on trading a Horne-Francis out? Would you be ticking that off? It obviously hasn't been great, but you are locking in the bad scores and the cash loss, and surely at some point he's going to turn this form around. Like Butters is a test this week, and I dare say Port, if they can bring him in, they'll do everything they can to get him right. So what are your thoughts of Horne-Francis?
So Horne-Francis has lost 79K. So less than 10% of what he was priced at to begin the year. And I think we can all agree that he's not a player that we go, I'm afraid for a month what he could do to ruin my season. He's an inconsistent player week to week, and he's an inconsistent player in game, and we've had the low side variance of that if you are like me and have owned him. I don't hate trading him out. I think I see a lot more worlds where he's not top of his line. So I'm absolutely okay with doing it.
Yeah. Red lighting, thoughts on Leak to Bice and either Campo, Foss or Lindsay to Marias? Well, I think we're going to be ticking those trades red lighting, and Leak to Bice is a great trade. You're getting rid of a red dot to a guy that's going to make cash. And then I think it comes down to if Campo's named or not on Thursday night. If he's named or he's sub, if he's named, you keep him. If he's sub or not, he's the guy that goes. And if you can do the Foss to Marias move and hold Lindsay, I think that's a good move. So I'm ticking those two off. Tim, thoughts on Tom Green? Andrew's got that question there. What are your thoughts on Tom Green as an underpriced premium?
Yeah, I like it. I've been playing around with going big this week myself. So Tom Green is one that I've looked at. Andrew Brayshaw is one that I've looked at. I think I've probably settled on Isaac Rankin as the trade-in, just because I think he's underpriced, significantly underpriced. Well, maybe 10 points or something along those lines, potentially 15. But yeah, look, I did have a look at both of those. I'm a bit concerned about Tom Green's kick to handball ratio. We have seen him in the past have games where he really racks up and doesn't score that high. I'm just actually having a look at their run at the moment. It's not a bad run at the moment. West Coast, obviously, this week. So, you've got to you could bring him in and maybe even he's a captain option. It's got some yellow teams from there on in. And then basically, I think the other one you got to consider is like an Andrew Brayshaw, which I was probably leaning more towards an Andrew Brayshaw than a Tom Green, just because I feel like he has a better ability to fill up the stat lines. Like I said, I'm just concerned about Tom Green's willingness to handball.
Have you seen Frio's run as well?
Yeah, so
next 3 weeks.
Western Bulldogs, Richmond, Melbourne, Western Bulldogs are a white team according to DFS, but Richmond's light green and Melbourne is dark green. So, yeah, that's a better run than Tom Green as well.
I was looking at Tom Green last week as a trade-in. I ended up going on Noah Anderson, but I do like Tom Green because does have West Coast this week. But I still think he's probably a top 12 mid for us this year. So it's just getting that. He's probably in that he's one of those guys, isn't he? In that bracket, you've got the Dacostas, you've got the Brayshaw, you've got him. I know Matt Rouse sort of put his hand up as well, under $1 million. So there's these sort of guys that I think is probably what we would need to target in upgrade season because there's a bit of value on all of them. It's just getting on the right time, I think.
Well, that's kind of partly my thinking behind Rankin because I feel like he's top of his line, well, not top of his line, but it's certainly in that top 6 and underpriced. I'm not sure what his price actually was. I think it's about 85 or something like that, isn't it?
I think it's nearing 90 now, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I've got it.
Someone's got that.
He's 865.
Yeah, priced at 89. So, look, I still think he's got a bit of value in him.
I think Tim froze.
Oh, God.
Maybe he said 89, I reckon.
Oh, yeah, 89.
Back.
89.
There we go. 89. Yeah, there we go. Cool.
Yeah.
We've got another one here from Alex. So, Jordan, I'll go to you for this one. Have some possible trades in Fraser, Sam De Koning, Chera, Sanders, and Horn Francis. Should I focus on trying to upgrade one of them or give them another week and double downgrade?
Oh, that's a good question.
You had a bit of a chat about this with DT Lemon as well. As I keep recommending, go have a watch. It's a very, very good chat. But what are your thoughts about potential double downgrade or trade maybe one of those guys above?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like if this team's got a red dot, I think that's more important than getting these guys out because you want to get the cash. The number one thing that Lemon and I talked about was team value because eventually you're going to get to a couple of weeks and you're going to get stuck. So you want to, if you've got a red dot and you're trading out Fraser or someone, you're not really going to get your team value growing because you want to keep building your team. So I think that would, depending on the team, but if he's got all these rookies and he's looking at trading one of those, I am worried about SDK this week because there's talks that Stanley's going to come in. Comes up against Gawn. He is one that I'm looking at as potential out this week. Because if Stanley comes in, like SDK got subbed last week, I don't know, could he put up a 50? Like this is something that's sort of I've been looking at. So I'd probably put him as the one that I'd try and get out, I think.
Yep, I would agree with that as well. Yeah, SDK could go. Got a couple of super chats here, so thanks everyone that sent those through. So we got Dill Jones, he's got the first one, Liam. Gawn to Marshall and Stewart to Noble. So first I want to get your thoughts on John Noble and then your thoughts on, I guess, the ruck trade, because obviously Gawn's got a great matchup, but Marshall has been very, very good the past fortnight.
Yeah, I don't love trading Gawn this early. I don't know if this is the time of year to be doing that trade, if I'm being perfectly honest. As for Stewart to Noble, Noble sits in a really risky but high leverage kind of spot as a trade target. He's done what we expected Dan Rioli to do. Dan Rioli, who's put up now a 70 and a 60 and really underwhelmed. But that's because he is playing higher up the ground and he is trying to gain meters by foot. And Noble is the one who's taking a key amount, well, the most of the kicking. I haven't looked at Gold Coast's run for designated kickers, but if I can stall for long enough to be able to get it.
I know that they got the Crows this week, so I'm pretty sure that's a tough matchup. And I'm not just because I'm a Crows fan, but I'm pretty sure that Crows aren't a great matchup for defenders.
No, the Crows are not a great matchup for defenders. They do often defend very high. They're a high pressure team. They look to limit cheap marks, 45 kicks. They've kind of shown that now for 3 weeks. Caleb Daniels still managed to score really, really well. I don't think it's, a completely smothering. No one will be able to score. I just don't know if Noble is able to work through that. I don't think he has that same pedigree that Daniel does to be able to find space. Now, he's bloody tiny, so it can't be that hard to find space for it. But you kind of know what I mean. I don't hate going Stewart to Noble, if only because it's in a line where we're very concerned about the options that we have. It still just feels like you're taking a punt. And if you're not going to trade Gawn and you're not losing cash there, having a look at Max Holmes, for example, having a look at Jordan Clark, both of whom I think are presenting a little bit of value on what they could average for the rest of the year. They're not in that extremely high, like $1 million plus range. That's personally where I'd be looking if I was going to upgrade Stewart this week.
Yeah. I don't personally love the moves just because I do feel like they're very sideways. And I feel like if you're not upgrading this week, you should be maybe preparing yourself to make an upgrade next week. So like Gawn could go massive this week against Geelong. And I'd probably expect him to. He's obviously Melbourne have been under the hammer a bit. So I just expect him to put a good score. And Stewart, like he got injured, but he put up a 95 in like essentially 3 quarters or just over against Freo in round 1. And then obviously against St Kilda, he obviously got injured, and we're all going to be looking at him at some point if you don't have him. So I feel like you keep him, you save yourself a trade, and Stewart to Noble, you might even be reversing that trade in 2 weeks' time. So
whereas I'm totally okay to trade out Stewart. That man is going to sink your season. Like, do not try and continue to hold. I don't think that the thing that was an advantage, right, for Stewart in that round 1 game against Fremantle is he stayed on in the 4th quarter, same as SDK, and racked up a whole bunch of marks while they were taking the piss and absolutely tearing Freo to shreds.
It was wonderful.
The problem we've got now, right, is that he's now under an injury cloud. And what have we seen Chris Scott do before when Tom Stewart is nursing injuries? Sometimes it's early in the season. Quite often it's middle and late in the season. He's the player who gets subbed out or goes to the bench for 10 minutes to go, doesn't come back on. I don't know if the ceiling is there. And I think that if they're rolling a team with Atkins, Nevitt, Jai Clark, Jack Bowes, Bailey Smith, Max Holmes, there's enough midfielders there. So I don't know if he's getting the midfield time either. I just don't like having Tom Stewart in my team at this stage.
Yeah. Yep, no, very, very good point. I'm just hopeful that he can come good for me because I started him. But yeah, I'd almost prefer Dill to almost go Gawn to Briggs if you're doing a restructure, go Stewart up to someone if you're going to trade out those two. But yeah, I'd almost keep those two and look around. We got another one, Super Chat. Thanks from Caleb Collette here. Hi, guys. Got a team value of 20.6 million. So just a lazy near 600K more than my team. So that would be sitting. And I think that would be arguably top 50 in terms of team value, if I'm not mistaken, in the comp.
20.6. There's someone at 20.595 who is 5th overall for salary cap.
Yeah, so
that's unreal.
You've got a top
and
5.
Just for context, funnily enough, George, you have 20.334. You're at 861st, which is one different from my overall rank. And I'm at 1250 almost exactly.
There you go.
Beautiful. He's saying, hi, guys. I just said it before. Do I go SDK or Fraser to Holmes or double downgrade with Marek and Marias with 400K left? Liam, what are your thoughts?
I think that SDK is a massive potential issue for you. He'd be my trade-out priority. And then if you can't get... I think I would be foregoing Marek and see what trades I can do to bring in SDK. Get rid of SDK and also bring in Marias.
Yeah, so it looks like you can go SDK to Holmes and then do a rookie shuffle down to Marias and have a little bit of cash there. So I think we both like those trades. Detached Edits, and he's put it in full capitals to make sure that we understand the question. So appreciate Detached Edits for the super chat. Tim, what are your thoughts on Horn Francis to Rankin or going an Ollie Hollands to Nick Dacos?
So let's deal with Dacos first. So look, I think it's a good call that you're watching him. I just think you might be a couple of weeks early. He is up against Colin. Is that Carlton this week, isn't it? Right. So potentially, is that right? Hang on.
He's got
Stewart and then Sydney.
Yeah,
Carlton and Sydney.
Yeah. So Sydney is Dacos is, I think it's pretty definite that he's going to get a tag during that game and might even get a tag this week as well. So I would be looking to potentially wait 2 weeks before you jump on a Dacos, but I like the way you're thinking because that's the way I was thinking as well. So look, Rankin's my number one trading target this week, like I was kind of talking about before. The only thing I don't like about those trades is Horn. Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, just thinking here, if he's got Hollands to Dacos, that's a lot of money.
What
about you? Would you just go Hollands to Rankin and put a Baz Smith or whoever in the midfield?
100%.
Yeah, because I don't like the JHF. Yeah, it's too sideways.
You're getting an upgrade going Hollands to Rankin, and you're keeping JHF. So I would be doing that. And
cash too.
For next week, yeah, that's like the perfect trade.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big tick if you can do that trade detached edits. Because I did that. I did Will Data Rankin last week and put Caleb Daniel was sitting in the midfield, but yeah, one of those guys in the midfield gives you a bit of flexibility as well with trades. Jack Main's got another super chat, so thanks, mate, for putting this one through. So, Geordie, what do you think of Pryor to Bice and Sanders to Rankin holding Never, obviously providing that he isn't the sub? So interesting.
Yeah, I love Sanders to Rankin. I think he is, he's a clear top six. I'm cool with holding Nevitt. I think as long as he's not the sub, I think he can put up a decent score. The only thing is Pryor. I might even flick to Liam because he's the Essendon man, but he's got a bit more cash to make. I guess if it's the only thing that you can do to get down a Bice, the thing that I'm looking at is getting Bice in my utility for someone else. Like I'd probably rather trade Foss to Bice than a Pryor and have Bice in my utility. That gives me a lot more flexibility come gather round. If I want to go on SDK to a midfielder and Bice is a good score, I can flick that. So, I mean, you could do it. I just feel like Bice, I might flick to Liam on what he thinks about Pryor, but I think he's got a bit more money to make. And I think with Essendon winning that game on the weekend, like I don't think he's going to be out of the side anytime soon. So I'd be looking at like a Foss or something in your utility.
Yeah, I think and I've dabbled in looking at trading Pryor to Bice because it banks a lot of cash, nearly 200k. It could allow me to actually upgrade a Foss to Will Ashcroft, for example, because I got a whole bunch of cash back. So I think I can see why Pryor is the potential trade out. I am also of the opinion that he still has a whole bunch more cash to make. I still think that he has, like, if he's going to be averaging 70, which is on the higher end of kind of when we've talked about what Bombers defenders can average across the kind of the Brad Scott era, it's in that mid to high 60s range. I think 70s are still there over the next 3 to 4 weeks. If he's currently priced at 50, he's probably still got another 100 plus K to make. I still think that that's worthwhile holding. The question then becomes, is Sanders out and Rankin in such a priority? Because like I've had a bit of a look around and I reckon that having Rankin is one of the biggest steps to being highly ranked at the moment, and also having Tom Liberatore, funnily enough. But I definitely reckon that I can see why you'd want to do that. And I think the thing that's kind of gone undiscussed with Pryor is that we've got a lot of cash stagnation on our benches this week because we're not going to know Campo playing if he doesn't get named, and I think that's a below 50% chance at the moment. We've got a lot of us have Boyd on the bench. He's not making cash. And then we've got 2 Bombers defenders who are not making cash because they didn't get the accelerated price rises.
And I don't hate Will Day as well.
Yeah. I don't think I'm seeing kind of Will Day sits outside of it, but Kako as well. That's a lot of cash stagnation from a cash generation perspective. I don't hate the idea of using that as an extra weight on the scales to pushing you towards trading for Bice. You just have to be comfortable that you're doing a trade and Bice is going to end up making more cash than Pryor will. So maybe have a bit of a play around on like a DFS pricing simulator. Just kind of map out like what do I see Pryor averaging? What do I see Bice averaging? Let's say if I make 50 to 70k more, I think you can tick off that trade.
Would you be happy with him trading a Lindsay instead of a Pryor?
Oh, yeah, this was the thought that I had as soon as the question got asked. I just hate everything about the whole Lindsay question, not because I think it's a bad one, just because I don't bloody know. he sits in the most awkward spot. Like, if he got injured on 40, it would be so much easier to hold because his break even would probably still be close to single digits. It's that 32 or whatever it is that really...
Yes.
Oh, yeah, whatever it is in the 30s. It just makes me really uncomfortable. I could definitely... Yeah, it's really tough.
If he does prior to buys, as Liam was saying, he is probably going to get more points because this is provided Nevitt's not the sub this week. Nevitt should come out and get 80, hopefully. And Rankin's going to be an upgrade to centre. So you are going to get more points. Bice is still going to make you cash. Like, I understand, like, I'd try and keep prior, but if it's the only option, then I think it's a good trade.
If he doesn't have Marias, I'd almost do Nevitt to Marias and hold prior and do that instead. Marias is going to make more cash. Nevitt is always a chance of being a sub. That if he doesn't have Marias, I'd look at that, or even a Harvey Langford. I think Langford was impressive, and he's got to get midfield time the way that Melbourne have been looking at. So that's another option if he doesn't want to do prior to Bice. But if he wants Bice, then if you don't have a defender, then you could definitely look at that. But Jack, that's our thoughts there. But just conscious of time, we'll keep moving through these. We've got a couple of super chats flying through tonight. Appreciate the extra support from these people. So Campbell Baldwin's got this one here. Tim, can I do... I was going to say Darcy short then. God, I'm still bloody in cricket, mate, after watching IPL last night. Can I do short to Zorko and Closey to Warner or SDK to Sinclair?
Sinclair.
Yeah, I like this. I like the Sinclair pick better than I like the Zorko pick. So Zorko, I mean, what's he currently averaging, right? Fucking miles up there. Averaging 119. Look, he's had a good start to the year. I know Liam was talking about that great run, and look, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not claiming to know the answer, but I guess the thing that I've got is I've just got a doubt about whether he can continue to score at that level, as well as throwing in the doubt about potentially him getting injured, even though he had played a whole season last year. Whereas if we're looking at Sinclair, I think there's potentially still some upside there in terms of where he's priced at and where he might average for the year. So, yeah, I would go Sinclair over Zorko.
Yeah, and you're getting rid of SDK to get Sinclair. You keep short. I'd rather keep short and then go to Sinclair than trade short, keep SDK. But Closey to Warner, obviously we'll see if Closey's named or not, but he could be the sub. That could be a move you look at, or maybe look at a different rookie shuffle. But yeah,
you might be able to go Bice or Marias there with DPP and stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
And like short, he got 101 on the weekend. Like he's averaging 90. Like I'm probably trying to look at him until like holding him to the mid-season buys. Like I don't think he's doing a bad job unless he's got a bad run, which I've not. But he has not at the moment. He's not really someone I've even considered trading out. Whereas if you get Sinclair for SDK, you're getting quite a fair bit amount of points there.
I think the one thing we haven't really seen Richmond do yet is slow their game down and start to chip it around, which I think is also potentially going to happen as well.
Yeah, exactly. And his kick-ins were up on the weekend after only having, I think, one or none against Port. He had the most with 4. I'd surely Richmond go more to him to kick-ins because he's their best kick in that defensive half. So hopefully he gets more kick-ins. Tony Ford's got this super chat. Thanks, mate. So Liam, thoughts on Day to Brayshaw and Lindsay to Marias. Also have SDK, but looking to upgrade him next week.
Yeah, I think that this is another one that comes down to teams because given that you're not touching anyone that's playing in the first game, SDK is a big concern. If Reece Stanley's in, I think you pivot the Day to Brayshaw trade and you just commit to holding Day for his good run and just cop what could be a potential cash loss against Port Adelaide. The other side of the trade I like. And if you do go Day to Brayshaw, I think Brayshaw is an excellent trading target this week. I think we kind of saw the flip of the coin. We saw both the Fremantle boys go over 100 and we saw Dawson score an 80. The fortnight prior, we'd seen Dawson be that 100-plus midfielder, and both the Fremantle boys had been 80s. And that had been the kind of toss of a coin that a lot of people had at the beginning of the season for their M1, M2. So I'm totally okay with these trades. Just wait to see what teams say for Geelong.
Yep. Sean was also saying in the chat here as well, he's just like, before from Carter's question probably means 20.06 because apparently no one is at 20.6 million on the thing. So that makes me feel a little bit better because I'm at 20.02 or something like that. So I'm not too far off of that.
I definitely, so there's the highest team value is 20,703,000.
Okay, so it could be 20.6. So who knows? But it's a lot of money anyway. If you're over 20 million, you're going okay. David Dyker's got this super chat, so thanks as well, mate, for this one. Liam, I'll go back to you for this one as well. He's saying, "Hey lad, just wanted your thoughts on Bowie and Jace Burgoyne, both lowly owned and performing above price. Burgoyne probably will get DPP down back as well, and he's also, I'll add to this, got the Saints matchup this week. Are you interested in either? Well, I guess we'll start with Bowie. Is it too late for him? And then with Burgoyne, what are your thoughts with him?"
Yeah, they're both kind of at a similar area. I think they both, you're picking them, if you're picking Bowie, you obviously want him to get maybe not under the top 6 blanket, but get close enough to be able to hold to the mid-season buys. And then for Jace Burgoyne, I think he's over 800k at this point, and he's within 40, 50k of Will Ashcroft. So you are picking him to eventually transition him back to defence. Jace Burgoyne is the one that I'm almost more intrigued by, because he looked like the junkiest of all junk players against Essendon, and he'd done it the week prior against Richmond. Essendon haven't exactly been a team that allows insanely good scores. Like, it wasn't as though we saw huge scores from defenders for Adelaide the week prior. Whereas Bowie, they keep losing and losing badly. I don't think that their extremely high chip mark game style is going to last. And that's the thing that I've noticed a lot. They're looking to chip it around far too much, and their ball movement's terrible. I expect changes to be made. And I think that Caleb Windsor's a potential return this week. And then I think there are a couple of other. I think Judd McVee is on the horizon as well. I know that we'd said don't pick him because Stephen May was back, and then it didn't appear to have much impact. But it did have some impact after halftime. I think he scored only about 30 points after halftime last week. So I think that both are very risky, though. I think there are a lot of question marks over both. But Jace Burgoyne, he looked kind of Jordan Clark / Nazaya type of scorer last week. I thought he looked excellent.
Yeah.
I think it's too late to get Bowie personally.
Yeah, he's getting to a point where it's almost, if he puts up a 70 or even a 60, his cash gen just stops. You've got to hope that he keeps going, and he keeps going 85, 90 and making cash. So it is a bit of a risky one, but I thought about it last week and didn't go there, and he proved me wrong. So he could keep doing it potentially there, David. Thanks for the question, though. Jack Main's got another super chat. He's saying, is it all right to play Finn O'Sullivan on field? I'm going to say this week it is, but you don't want him on field in best 22. Best 22, you want him on the bench because he's shown that he's not a high ceiling type player. He wasn't a high ceiling type player in the juniors. Obviously, Dylan Alexander came on and was telling us in the preseason about that as well. So, yeah, I would be wanting him on my bench in best 22. Lim 3TZ has got a super chat with no question. I think he missed it. Hang on. He said,
Roll down a couple.
Yeah, so there it is. So he says, I have the option to go Will Day to anyone. I've got 1.3 million to spend. Who should I go? Tim, is obviously you've looked at these areas this week. I guess you're not. Yeah. We're not paying up for a Dawson. We're not paying up for the guys there. And just also to, I guess, my fears of Dawson having another calf injury were a little bit relieved because Louis sent me a message, heard it on the Traders pod. Apparently it's to cover up a new tattoo, which is a relief, but it's also an interesting call from Dawson to get a tattoo mid-season. Don't scare me like that, Geordie, mate. You know that I don't want.
Is that confirmed, Bales? Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I think that's what people have been saying. So,
yeah, I'm not sure if the source was super tight. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, it would be interesting. We'll see on Saturday. But yeah. So, Tim, are you looking at the guys that are just over the million, like the Brayshaws and Tom Greens? Is that the areas you think is ideal?
Look, I got a question I want to throw the boys as well, and it's around the research that I've done about this because I'm in a similar position. I've got 1.3, but look, I think it depends where you need the player. Like if it's a midfielder only, yeah, my top pick would be a Andrew Brayshaw, probably followed by a Tom Green. I do think the number one trade target for the week is an Isaac Rankin, as I've talked about all week. But it does depend on the trade out. And this is where I wanted to kind of throw to the boys and get their opinion. Because I do think there'll be a bunch of coaches I know there'll be a bunch of coaches double downgrading, cleaning up red dots this week, but I think there'll be a bunch of coaches that'll also be throwing up between a Riley Sanders to an Isaac Rankin or an SDK to a Jack Sinclair. And I'm curious to hear what the boys think is the better option.
Oof, I think like Rankin for me is like I'm so hot on Rankin. Like I just would want him in my side. The thing is that SDK does worry me, but like Rankin is like for me is like you got to get him, and he's like quite priced, quite cheap now. That you need to start getting on him, otherwise, he's just gonna go up in price. That's just my thoughts. And he's a top liner.
Team sheets? Is it just come down to team sheets for you? If Stanley's there, you trade SDK. If Stanley's not there, then you do the Sanders to Rankin?
Yeah, I mean...
not Sanders to Rankin, so you get Rankin, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, regardless of Stanley, before Jordy answers this, regardless of Stanley, I'm still leaning towards keeping SDK.
Yeah, well, SDK's break-even is 54. So if Stanley's in... We just need him to get that, really. I mean, I don't love it, but he's definitely one I want to get out of my side. Yes. The other thing is, we do have Reed and Pryor. Like, you could loop maybe, but it probably doesn't help you because you probably have both of those.
Yeah.
But you could see his score. But, yeah, I am worried about it. But I just think Rankin is like... Sinclair, like Rankin is, I'm like you, Tim. I'm just very hot on getting him in.
Yeah.
I started with him though, so yeah.
No. What does the man with the mustache think?
But
what do you reckon, Liam?
Oh no, you didn't.
I'm in the same camp. I think Rankin in is the better option. I think as well he's insulated from the fact, like. What's actually funny is that Sinclair is someone where we say we actually don't really care where he plays, midfield, half-back. We think he's a 100-plus player and he's unique in doing that. I think Rankin is almost the other side. If he spends half a game at full forward or out of the forward line, I still think he's going to be... Like we saw last year, he was able to push mid to low 90s. That's still enough for him to be some value, and I don't think that's going to be every week. I think that he's more underpriced than Sinclair is.
Oh yeah,
and that's with the other side, which is the SDK of it all, which does not make me feel comfortable. I'm glad that's one of the things that I don't have to worry about this week. And if you want to make it feel any better, Sam Collins scored a 52 last week. Bodie Hewland scored a 57. That's the type of score that a defender can score against Melbourne. And even if he's sitting behind the ball a little bit more, which is kind of what he does when he does play ruck, that's good. Or if he's spending time in the midfield, Melbourne are a train wreck and allow just ball movement everywhere.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I love all the talk of some of these Crows players. Like it's been Laird in the past, one of my favourites. Dawson's been in now, and Rankin's. It's fantastic. So it's keeping me afloat, even though my team is shit and I'm trying to work my way out of a big, giant hole. We got the number one coach around. We got Jacob Robb in the house saying first in the world. Yes, mate. Congrats on the early lead, mate. Hopefully you can keep it going, mate, and we'll see where you end up, mate. But congrats on being first. I'd love to know what that's like at some point in the future.
I've checked his team out too.
His team look like.
I think he loopholed Davidson, but he's got a couple red dots, I think, which I would be interested to see what he does this week.
Yeah, he's in a good position, so he might be able to fix those and do a bit of a double sideways and bring a couple of those rookies in. I've got a couple minutes before we finish. I've got another super chat from Lauren, so thank you for this, Lauren, here. So, Tim, going Day to Marias, other trade is going SDK to Whitfield or Hasty to Marek. So, which is a more important trade, SDK to Whitfield or Hasty to Marek?
I'm leaning towards Hasty to Marek. I think... I just think Hasty's a bit of a risk there. I mean, we've seen him in the sub, we've seen him in the red vest, we've seen him in the green vest. From what I've seen of him, I haven't been that as impressed with him as a player. And I do like the Marek move. I guess a bit like what we were talking about before. SDK is definitely a concern, but Whitfield, I don't really see him being underpriced at the moment. You're paying for a player that's basically priced at what they're going to go at. So I'm not at this time of the season. They're not the moves I'm looking to make. I'm looking to get two players who are underpriced. And, I had my week mapped out. It was Rankin this week. It was going to be Callum Mills next week. Obviously, that's been pushed back a bit now. So I'll find a replacement for him, but it's Nick Dacos in week 3. So they're the kind of players I think you should be looking at as underpriced players. And look, I think even this week, maybe even an Andrew Brayshaw fits into that. We thought he was underpriced at the beginning of the season, and I think he's dropped about 70K. So, that's another, maybe another underpriced player that you could consider.
Yep, I like the hasty to Marek move as well. We got one here from Glenn Bartlett. Do I upgrade Taylor this week? And if so, who to? Cheers, lads. Well, Glenn, I'm in this boat because I've still got Sam Taylor. And that was the unfortunate thing about we were warned with this, Glenn. Me and you were warned about this. We were all warned about it. If we started Taylor, this could have happened. And it's happened, unfortunately. So I'm probably going to have to hold for one more week because I need these other two guys in. But I'm just treating him as another.
What should we learn from this, Bale? What should we learn from it? Should we learn from the Will Day thing? Should we learn from? I think the Sam Taylor thing we definitely got to learn from and not do that again.
I started Taylor.
I started Taylor too.
Yeah, to play, but you don't be like me and keep holding.
I did is maybe Liam did the same thing. We had him in utility. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I had him in utility.
So that way we could
pay extra for
and then after round 1, we could go to anyone we want, which is like a more of a flexible thing. I think if you had him in defense, you were locked into that. Whereas and we could go to, because I was worried. I was like, who's going to pop in round 1? But I can go straight to them. I think I went Taylor to Nevitt round 1, which and that way you can be flex on that. But Bales, what's your thoughts on going Taylor to straight down to Bice?
Well, that's one of the trades that I'm looking at this week, and that'll probably lead us into what our current trades are and wrapping up. But I guess the way I'm looking at it, Glenn, is I'm looking at Taylor just as a rookie that's fat now, and he'll be on the bench when it gets to best 22. So worst case, if I can't trade him next week, he'll be there. But ideally, he's the guy that's going next week, and it could be down to a Bice. I think Taylor down to Bice, and if he's your D6. You downgrade into a rookie and you play at one of the trainers or the Reeds or the Prize or Bice on field as your one rookie. If you've already got a rookie and you're going, I think you have to go Taylor up. You can't. I'd be scared having two defender rookies on field. So, but yeah, I'm looking at potentially going down to a Bice next week if that's the thing. So, but we will wrap up here. There's been a lot of serve chats. Appreciate everyone that sent through their questions. Apologies if you didn't get your question answered. But if you would like your questions answered more, then you can head to our Patreon and go to patreon.com/AFL Fantasy Fanatics. And you get the Ask Me on Q service for free. You get exclusive Q&As. We'll be recording that tomorrow night as well. The patrons said that we'd be on a Wednesday with more information. So if you guys would like to do that, then the link's in the description there. Also, Ask Me on Q if you don't want to become Patreon is there. The link to that is in the description below as well. Liam, what are you currently thinking about with your two trades?
Oh, look, Bales, I wish I could tell you I knew what I was doing. I have a conundrum. I don't know. I've got Campo that I think needs to go, particularly if he's not picked this week. He's out. And then I've got the option to, potentially try and capitalise on a Pryor, take him up to Will Ashcroft. Or alternatively, I could get rid of Joel Frazier, take it to, I think, anyone over 1.05 million. But at the moment, I'm actually thinking I will be trading Jason Horne-Francis to Brayshaw.
Yeah, don't mind it.
Aggressive.
Yeah, exactly.
So my strategy is I traded out Perryman before round 2. I traded out Sanders last week. And day 2. I'm trying to stay 1 week ahead of these popular mid-price trade outs. And you still got SDK? I don't have SDK, so I don't have to worry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
I got
But
you.
there's also the Kane Farrell question, which he's like less than 2% owned. I won't bore everyone with that one, but that's another concern for me at the moment.
He's got the Saints this week, so I think he could put up a good score there. And Glenn said he's already got Reed and Trainer on field, so yes, I'd be upgrading Taylor in that scenario. Geordie, what are you looking at doing with your 2 trades this week? Because your trades last week were very, very nice. What are you looking at doing this week?
Yeah, so I'm similar to Liam. I think I'm going to try and be as flexible as I can this week. It probably really comes down to Geelong and the team sheet that I get. If Stanley's in, like I am worried about SDK. I'm also worried about Nevitt. So they're 2 that I might look at. I've also got Finn O'Sullivan there, but I don't think, as we talked about, I don't think he's a major one. But if I want to hold one of these guys, I might get him out. And I'm pretty keen to get. I think I really want Bice. I think he's probably my number 1. Maurice as well. I do want to get, and I'm a Port man. I love him, but I am a bit. Just today, I was just looking at the team sheets, and I am worried about. I think he's going to be good this week, but I'm just worried about him in the future because I think Butters is coming back. We've got like Lockie Jones. We basically would have to sub someone else, like a Travis Boak or a Jackson Mead or maybe a Berry or something like that. And I just want to. I think he's good for this week, but once Butters and Jones come in, I just wonder. I hope he's not sub, but it's just one I'm thinking about. So it's just what do I do there? So I think it'll depend on Geelong, but yeah, I'm still keen at the moment of getting Bice and Moraes in and holding some cash, but that might change.
Yeah, as you said with your stats before, 3 weeks, he goes 50, he makes well over 150k. So I think that's almost conservative. I think he could go more than 50, particularly this week against the Saints in a good matchup. Tim, what are you looking at doing with your 2 moves? Obviously, you hinted a bit before that you're looking at in the midfield.
Yeah, so first trade is going to be a Sanders to Rankin. And then, look, this second trade is really going to be determined by Campo. Like, if he comes in, I might look at something like a Horn Francis to an Andrew Brayshaw. I might even consider trading out a Lindsay. Like I said, if he's not in, it'll be a Campo, probably to a Marais.
Yep, like it. And then my trades, unfortunately, keeping Sam Taylor again. I'm looking at going Sanders down to a Ryan Marrick. And then I think Campo might get named. I think he might get named. I think Carlton he didn't do much wrong. He was quiet in that game against Hawthorn, but there's a lot more bigger issues at Carlton than a Lucas Camporelli. So I'm hopeful that he comes in, and I'll be going Hasty up to a Marais. But obviously, if Campo's not named, I think I'll probably just leave Hasty there for the time being, and even still, I might even still get rid of him, actually, to be fair. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at doing, Marais and Marrick to come in, but also did look at Taylor up to Holmes as well this week, but that leaves, I think, a Lawler on field, which I don't love necessarily. But yeah, got a couple of options there. But appreciate everyone that tuned in and sent through all their questions. Liam, mate, where can the people find you? Thanks for jumping on with us, mate.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure, and sorry if anyone's asked, I'm sure, lots of questions, and I've derailed it by taking about 10 minutes to do a 30-second job. You can find me on Twitter at Liam, AFLW Fantasy, and apparently I don't know if I can hear that, I'm on Ambulance Alley at the moment. So you can enjoy me having a whinge about that then.
Yeah, beautiful. No, thanks, mate. Geordie, mate, thanks for jumping on once again. Where can the people find you?
No worries, Bale. Thanks for having me. Just on X, just Jordan DeSena. Be tweeting there, try and do some Port stuff. Be going the game this Sunday, so hopefully we can win.
Yeah, beautiful, mate. Now, it'll be good to catch up with you and a couple of legends on Friday to watch.
Yes.
Hopefully, Stuart back in and the Cats and Melbourne game. Tim, where can the people find you? And also, we didn't mention it obviously before, but obviously Infinite Wealth. Where can the people find all that good stuff?
Tim Guest AU socials and infinitewealth.com.au/AFL Fantasy.
Yep, exactly. And you can find me at BAILSDT, and you can find us at AFL Fantasy Fans. I'm back tomorrow with Trade Talk and then Captains on Thursday. But we will be back on Friday for our pre-lockout chat to get even more of your questions answered, and we'll have a lot more information in regards to teams and whether Stanley is playing and if we need to stress about SDK. But thanks, everyone, for tuning in. have a good couple of nights, and we'll catch you guys in a couple of days. So thanks, everyone. See ya.